Hi, Hannah.
Hi, Sam.
How's it going?
It's great. I'm so excited to talk to you today about two things that aren't upsetting or disturbing at all.
Yeah, we really chose two topics
Sunshiny rainbow topics
for
today.
a sunshiny rainbow day. It's not a sunshiny rainbow day.
No, it's an overcast day, and we're talking. This episode that we're recording right now is going to be about abortion, the concept, and the nonfiction book by Jessica Valenti.
Yes.
By Jessica Valenti.
And to put a content warning up front, we obviously will be talking about a sensitive topic in that we'll be talking about abortion and some of the more graphic cases.
Medical, yeah, we're gonna
medically graphic.
Medically graphic cases of what I would term maybe a form of medical abuse, which is like denial of care, which has sometimes, upsetting and gruesome results, although we won't be lingering on those or talking about those in great detail. And then we will be acknowledging the existence of rape because it is a part of this conversation.
Yeah. So just a warning up front, if those topics are upsetting to you, you might want to skip this episode.
Or come back to it on a different day.
Yeah.
And the way that this came about was that we were talking past each other a lot when it came to abortion, when it came to reproductive rights.
I feel like we talk past each other. Not a lot, but like in our conversations, that does... Well, we talk to each other a lot, so it happens that we also talk past each other a lot. But yes, sorry, not to
also
derail
we've only been dating for a year, so we're still figuring each other out. And I think that we each approached the concept of abortion with a different set of premises, although I think by the time we met each other, you were pro-choice already.
Yes.
Yeah, but you didn't come up pro-choice.
No.
And so...
Sorry, I said that very emphatically as if that was like a good thing. I said it very emphatically because I very much did not come up pro-choice. For those who don't know us, I came up in a very conservative background, and so therefore I came up in a pro-life background, very much so.
Pro-life. And I came up in a, I would say, passively pro-choice community, family, culture. And then when I got to college and became a gender studies major and started volunteering as an abortion clinic escort, I quickly became so very pro-choice that I wouldn't even term the pro-life crowd pro-life. I would term them
anti-abortion.
Anti-choice.
Yeah.
Anti-choice, really, because, well, we'll get into it. But because of that, by the time we started getting to know each other, and we started getting to know each other in a post-ops world. So I have a lot of anger about this. And my attitude was very much like, if anyone is anti-choice in favor of abortion restrictions, meaningful abortion restrictions, then what that must mean is that they simply do not like women and want women to suffer or die. And when I say women in this context, the word woman definitely includes lots and lots of people who cannot get pregnant, like trans women and women who aren't fertile and postmenopausal women and all these, different beautiful types of womanhood. But I do think that the impulse to control reproductive healthcare access is driven by misogyny. And so that's why I will use that language, not to deny anyone's womanhood. And the reason why I thought this was because it seemed so obvious to me that abortion restrictions injure and harm and kill women. And I didn't realize that couldn't be obvious for someone else, particularly post-ops. And I would get really worked up a lot of the time. And I remember one morning I was reading a news article, and I said something to you, Sam, that I had said a lot of times before, which is women are bleeding out in their cars in hospital parking lots. Women are getting sepsis. This is inhumane. This is completely irrational. And I had said this to you before, and you never really had the strong reaction that I would think that one ought to have to that kind of graphic language. And on this day, you realized what I was getting at, and I realized what you thought I had been saying.
Right. Which is that women were dying, bleeding out in parking lots because of the fear of going into.
Is what you thought I was saying. Yeah. But you realized what I was actually saying
was that they were being denied abortion care.
Yeah. And you were really surprised by that.
Yes.
Yeah. And I was shocked that you were shocked by that.
Yeah. Well, and this will come up in our discussion today because it is one of the big points in the book, is that, there's this idea that on the conservative side, there's this idea that if you really need an abortion for medical reasons, you can get it.
Yeah, which is so far from reality as I understand it, which is to say, reality, that it hadn't even occurred to me. And so there's ignorance on my side too of the faulty premises that, I don't know, half the country is being fed that fuel this idea that it is in any way reasonable to restrict abortion care. That's what we're going to get into today, is the realities of abortion care in the context of a state that restricts it. But more importantly, and hopefully more interestingly, the differences between the premises that we each had about this medical procedure and the politics around it that caused so many miscommunications between us, and maybe caused a lot of miscommunications between other people and the people that they love.
Yeah. So on my own part, I decided to read the book Abortion by Jessica Valenti. So Abortion, with the subtitle Our Bodies, Their Lies, and the Truths We Use to Win, is a 2024 book by Jessica Valenti. Valenti is a feminist author and activist who co-founded the blog Feministing in 2004.
Of which 19-year-old Hannah was an avid daily reader.
Valenti has a master's in women's and gender studies from Rutgers and has written a handful of nonfiction feminist books. Her latest book, Abortion, the one we're discussing today, began in response to the 2022 Supreme Court case reversing Roe v. Wade, known as the Dobbs decision. After the decision, Valenti started a newsletter called Abortion Every Day, where she writes about the state of abortion in a post-Roe America. The book that we're covering chronicles long-standing conservative viewpoints and attacks on abortion and birth control to illustrate where we may be headed. It serves as a good introductory text to the status of abortion in a MAGA America. Yeah, I feel like that really just kind of hits at the nail on the head as to why I read the book. It's a good introductory text. Jessica Valenti is a good journalist and has been meticulously chronicling and gathering evidence in support of a lot of her claims. So I think it is very fact-driven, while at the same time also very passionately written, as it should be, in regards to the inhumanity of what is happening.
And today we're talking about a book, and Sam has read the book, and I have not.
Yeah, and I think that was because, again, as this being an introductory text to kind of the state of abortion as it stands today, you, while not having read the book, have pretty much heard and understand a lot of the points that are made in the book and have seen and heard a lot of the evidence that is brought up in support of the argument.
Yes, I'm not in the learning stage. I am activated. I actually volunteer as a clinic escort and donate to an abortion access fund.
Yeah. So I thought about going through some quick facts that the book brings up that we probably won't get into too deep, because I think there are some more surprising things that the book had to say, just to kind of establish a foundational point for us and the listeners to disembark from.
Yeah, and I would love it if, as you share these facts, you tell me about what your reaction to them was when you were reading the book.
Yeah, I think most of these things are things that I already knew to be the case.
Oh, okay.
Or it wasn't a large leap for me to follow the evidence and understand the argument. And it's surprising how much of this is medical fact that is not understood or just blatantly either ignored or misrepresented by conservatives.
Yes.
So, number one, abortion is safer than pregnancy. That is certainly true given the drugs that we have available today for abortion.
Yeah, for new listeners, Sam is a pharmacist.
So, whereas pregnancy, is a, maybe I'll let you, like, pregnancy is a pregnancy.
I'm going to talk off the cuff about it because I'm a lady and I feel less self-conscious about talking off the cuff about it, maybe.
Yeah.
Pregnancy is cool as hell.
Yeah.
Pregnancy is amazing. You're growing a person in your body. It's also pretty horrific if you don't want to be experiencing it because there is a life form growing in your body, literally sapping your energy, which, when that energy is freely given and you can't wait to meet your baby, seems pretty awesome and miraculous. A baby is a pretty complicated organism. And I think it's incredible and cool that so many humans are capable of, growing one of those. And also a lot of stuff can go wrong. And even when everything goes perfectly right, it's incredibly taxing and it can change your body permanently.
Yeah.
Which, when you go into it intentionally and with joy, is fine. We do lots of things that change our bodies permanently. But if you don't choose to undergo such a dramatic physical process, I think one can easily viscerally understand how very horrific that is.
Yeah.
Yeah. I want to know more about how 16-year-old Sam would have reacted to that factoid, but we don't have to get into that just this second.
Yeah. I mean, I think that the purpose of this is just to say that, I think when I thought about this section, I just wanted it to be we're not here trying to argue pro-life versus pro-choice. We've already stated that pro-life is at best, misinformed ideology. And so, this isn't a philosophical discussion on the morality of abortion, I think is what we're trying to establish.
Yeah, and if that's what you're looking for, you should look elsewhere because neither of us is philosophers.
Correct, yeah. So the second point is that there are, as we discussed in the beginning with women bleeding out in hospital parking lots, there are definitely negative consequences of denied abortions.
Mm-hmm.
And also just the fear that is seated, the fear that's seated around abortions makes it even harder for women seeking one.
Yeah, and when you say the fear that's seated around abortions, you mean not only in women, but also in doctors.
Yes, for sure, which we'll get a little bit more into that. But the next point is that abortion regret, which is the idea that after or even years after having an abortion, women generally report some form of regret of getting the abortion, is largely a myth.
Yeah, it was also abortion regret was something that if I was aware of it when I was college age and early 20s, it was only I was vaguely aware of it as a stupid talking point of the right wing. I did not take it seriously as a concept.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Let's see. This was actually an interesting statistic. And if you want the specifics of where these statistics come from, you can find the book and find the references that the book uses for these statistics. But 6 out of 10 women who get abortions already have children. That is certainly different from what the conservative media, I think, or conservatives would generally portray abortion as young, promiscuous teenagers trying to look for a way out of the
consequences
sin.
of their actions.
Yeah,
right?
The consequences of their actions.
Yeah. God, I'm so tempted to get into all of these factoids and start unpacking them.
Yeah, and I think we will to a certain extent, but we'll keep going here.
You're the one who read the book. You lead the way.
Yeah. This is another point that I didn't necessarily know, but wasn't too striking given my medical background. Maternal morbidity and mortality. So both illness, injury, and death is increasing in states with abortion restrictions.
No shit.
Yeah. Conservatives don't like birth control, which is...
yeah, that was another miscommunication that you and I had.
Yeah, that like conservatives are quote unquote coming for birth control.
Do you mind if I tell that story?
Yeah, no.
It was like a few days after Trump was reelected, and I was freaking out, and Sam was freaking out a bit less. I would say meaningfully less than I was.
Mm-hmm.
And I probably a lot of people can relate to this, but I felt like every day I was saying, oh my God, they're not going to regulate food. How am I going to get safe produce? Oh my God, what's going to happen to public schools? What's going to happen to my health care? What's going to happen to housing prices? What's going to happen to my job? Like, new considerations occurred to me every day. And that day, the consideration that occurred to me was, will I no longer be able to get my birth control? And I said this to Sam, and Sam was puzzled. I remember you being like, why would you think that? And I was like, because why wouldn't I think that? and you said, well, I don't know why the Trump administration would be motivated to just take people's health care away. And I said, that's all they've been doing. That's all that the Christian right has been doing for the past 20 years. What do you mean you don't know why they would do that?
Yeah. And I think more specifically, to get into that point, there is a lot of fear-mongering that happens within the conservative/Christian right about birth control and the quote-unquote lack of safety of it, or the way it changes people.
Yeah, that's true. But you were kind of talking from the opposite of that. It mystified you that I would be worried about birth control restrictions.
Right, because I didn't really know that this was a thing.
A thing, yeah.
That like conservatives were actually like wary of birth control.
Yeah, and I don't want to come across like I'm attacking you at all. Like, and the next day I looked up a bunch of articles about like judicial decisions that restricted birth control access and sent them to you, and you were like, yes, sorry. Makes sense that you're worried. It was like not you were not being a butthead about it. We were navigating differences in our backgrounds. Yeah, I think that was part of the disconnect that motivated you to read this book.
Yeah. Okay, so with those points established as like sort of a foundation of where I was at kind of entering into our relationship in terms of things that I either already understood or quickly read and understood to be fact, let's talk about a couple points that the book brings up that I found the most striking. And this is not a super long book, but there is a lot of information with a lot of references in it. So, I've just picked a couple. There's, the book is a lot more than what we'll be discussing.
Yeah.
I do recommend the book, especially for someone who is not familiar with I hesitate to say politics of abortion, but
the landscape
of
the
abortion,
reality of abortion.
Especially the landscape in 2025
is bad.
So the first point I wanted to bring up is actually a quote from a study by Lift Louisiana. Lift Louisiana is a abortion rights group, and in March of 2024, they released a report called Criminalized Care: How Louisiana's Abortion Bans Endanger Patients and Clinicians. And this was basically, this was taken from the report, and then I'll let you know when when the word-for-word quote from the report comes up. Louisiana's abortion ban is one of the strictest in the nation. Doctors who perform abortions can face 15 years in prison. So in order to, as one doctor put it, preserve the appearance of not doing an abortion, they give women C-sections. One patient was just 20 weeks pregnant when her water broke, far too early for a fetus to survive. She wasn't given a choice, just surgery. A Louisiana emergency medicine physician explains, and this is the actual quote from the report. This person has had a C-section, and that means that she's at higher risk for any future pregnancies. She can no longer deliver vaginally. The appropriate thing to do would be a D&E, without subjecting the patient to this unnecessary abdominal surgery. But my colleague didn't feel like she could do that while remaining in compliance with the law or appearing to remain in compliance with the law.
Mm-hmm.
So
I just want to chime in real quick. That is not necessarily true that after having a C-section you cannot deliver vaginally. But that is a different conversation for a different day. But I did feel the need to go, not quite true. But yeah, that's a major abdominal surgery, as opposed to a D&E, which would be a dilation and excavation.
Yeah.
Which is where the cervix is dilated using medicine, and then either through a vacuum or some other device, or maybe even a medicine, the contents of the uterus are excavated. And I'm not trying to say the contents of a uterus as a way to sound really callous. It's just, it's not always a fetus that are the contents of a uterus. Yeah. So instead, this major abdominal surgery is done where a lot of layers of the body need to be opened up. It has a big effect on the abdominal, the core muscles. Yeah. And the recovery and risk are...
Yeah, you're cutting.
So much more, yeah.
Everything about surgery nowadays is to trying to make it as minimally invasive as possible. And we'll get into, I think, in one of the other parts, hearing from a quote from an anti-abortion group that talks about how C-sections are the preferred method. And that just goes against this general trend that we are trying to make surgeries less invasive. Anytime you cut into skin, cut through muscle, fascia, it is, number one, increasing the risk of infection, and number two, weakening that tissue. Yes, it will recover, but it won't recover to where it was before. And so, but the whole point of this is that they're doing this, the doctors are making medical decisions out of fear for going to jail.
Now, what would 18-year-old Sam, how would 18-year-old Sam have reacted to that?
That is a difficult one because 18-year-old Sam didn't even know he was going to be a pharmacist yet or go into the medical field. So a lot of this would go over his head to begin with. I think 18-year-old Sam, when presented with this information, would probably say something to the extent of, well, let's hear both sides, or I'm not a medical professional. Yeah, something to the effect of, okay, this report is saying this, but, is that medical consensus? Or, I don't even know if 18-year-old Sam would have had the language of medical consensus.
Okay, what about 20-year-old Sam, 21-year-old Sam?
Yeah, I mean, I think Sam prior to pharmacy school would have said...
How old was Sam when he first, a year of pharmacy school under his belt? I'm bad with chronology.
What would he have said?
No, how old would he have been?
22.
Okay,
I think maybe the more relevant point here is that 18, 20, 22-year-old Sam didn't interact with this on this level at all, because kind of the extent of abortion discussions, at least to that point in his life, was revolved around the idea that, best case scenario, an abortion might be medically necessary, but it's still a not morally bad thing, but it's still not a preferred thing because of this view that a fetus is alive. And not that a fetus is alive, this view that a fetus is a person. And just kind of this strict morality applied that, okay, well, they're a person, therefore if you're doing something to that person that would prevent them from surviving, then you're killing them, and killing is bad. It was like this logical chain that totally disregarded the woman as a life and focused in a supposedly objective way, well, killing is bad and abortion is killing, and therefore abortion is bad.
And I know we've tread this ground before, but I don't remember exactly what you said. With bodily autonomy entering the chat.
Yeah.
This flow of logic, what would be the response to the point that we have this thing called bodily autonomy? And it means that if you need my kidney in order to survive, you will die without my kidney. And I only need one kidney.
Yeah.
In order to live a long and healthy life.
Yeah.
I still cannot be compelled to donate my kidney to you. And in fact, even if I am dead already, I am no longer using my body. I cannot have been compelled during life to donate any of my organs. And yet, a pregnant person must be compelled to donate their body, their organs, and their health to another quote-unquote life. What would be the response to that line of reasoning?
I mean, I think I could speculate about it, but again, I think the more important point here is that Sam at that time hadn't really even encountered these arguments.
Oh.
Yeah. This was, abortion discussion, especially as someone who's without a uterus, like the extent of pregnancy discussion in my life as like a serious topic was basically don't get someone pregnant unless you are willing to be there for them. That was kind of like the extent of my moral discussion of pregnancy.
And that's really interesting because, like, from my point of view, it was more like, well, obviously the guy might not stick around. So given that,
yeah,
there was not this sense of like, the man is as responsible, or I should say the non-pregnant parent is as responsible as, and I'm sorry, can I like do a quick side note?
Yeah.
Like when I'm talking about the misogyny that drives the anti-choice movement, I'm going to use gendered language. They want to hurt women. They want to harm women.
Yeah.
When I'm talking about like the realities of pregnancy and abortion care, I'm going to try to use gender neutral language because you do not have to be a woman to get pregnant.
Yeah.
That's all. So yeah, it was like kind of this cynical pragmatism of like, yeah, like if you get pregnant, like the person who got you pregnant probably won't stick around. And if they do, they probably won't be very helpful. And so given that, what do we think? Given the reality that like the pregnant person is going to end up being the primary parent.
Well, and I think what goes unsaid in the conservative viewpoint, kind of the underlying, as we've discussed several times before, this kind of sense of just natural law is that a pregnant woman has a duty as a mother to sacrifice for her kid.
Yeah.
Is kind of like how it's portrayed. And so this idea that we should be focused on two lives, if we're even going to grant it that far, I would say that wasn't even the reality. The reality was, well, the mother's obviously expected to be a mother, so we don't need to consider her autonomy. Therefore, it's this life and this person that what we're calling from the conservative viewpoint a person in this fetus that is the one to be regarded, and therefore anything that would hurt or kill this what we're calling a person is wrong, and therefore abortion is wrong.
Because this tiny person is voiceless, is vulnerable, is the perfect picture of innocence.
Yeah.
There is this valorization, glamorization of like innocence and sweetness and smallness and vulnerability as moral purity, where like particularly among feminine coded people, like forceful expressions of autonomy or even just expressions of autonomy take away from moral purity.
Yeah.
And so like you deserve less regard.
Yeah.
The more autonomy you express.
Yeah.
A fetus is a perfect quote unquote person to defend because they can't disagree with you. They can't speak for themselves.
Yeah.
But to be fair to this conservative mindset that you grew up with, there was not a sense of like, obviously the non-birthing parent will just skedaddle. There was a sense of, as a man, what you do is you step up and be there for your family, right?
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
And that was like not part of my perception of this worldview at all. I was like, no, they just want to have it both ways. They just want to burden women.
Yeah.
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 I think another thing about the conservative worldview around this that I find really interesting is like, it's really telling how younger Sam would not have known that pregnancy is a lot more dangerous than abortion. Younger Sam would not have known that, or I don't know that this is true, but like it is part of the conservative perception that in cases of rape, you're less likely to become pregnant. And I think that speaks to an ideology of like natural processes are morally good and will work out in our favor.
Yeah.
And external intervention is unnatural and therefore morally bad. This is an insight that you've shared with me.
I think we've probably hinted at it or, skimmed the surface of it. There is certainly within conservative viewpoints, there's just this idea that what is natural is good, is right, is morally pure. Mm-hmm. But what is natural is never really questioned. It's just what's natural.
Yeah, and what's natural is what seems natural to me.
Yeah.
Based on my cultural background and my set of unexamined biases. But I will say, like, I totally get the allure of this because as you heard me, like, wax poetic about pregnancy, like, I get it. It's miraculous. It's incredibly cool.
Yeah.
I get seeing it as a moral good and one of the most beautiful things that nature is capable of. I just also don't kid myself that because it's miraculous and beautiful and natural and incredible, that nothing can possibly go wrong because it's a moral good.
Yeah.
I don't know. Maybe it's patronizing for me to say kid myself, but my worldview doesn't accommodate that. I don't believe in intelligent design, right?
Yeah.
And so if you don't believe in intelligent design, it's a little easier to say this is a miraculous, incredible, beautiful process. And it can go wrong in so many ways because evolution does not result in perfection.
Yeah.
That's not how it works.
Yeah.
Yeah. But God, everything he
works
designs is perfect.
Ways.
That too. But everything that he designs is perfect, right?
Yeah.
And so to say pregnancy is more physically dangerous than this human intervention of abortion, like, does not compute.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay, so the next quote that I'll be taking from is from the Charlotte Lozier Institute, and they are an anti-abortion group.
Word.
They are actually so I believe Wikipedia said they are like the research and education arm of the Susan B. Anthony List organization, which is they basically are a super PAC for, or I don't know what the difference between a super PAC and PAC is, but they're a political action committee who fund candidates who are anti-abortion or, in their terminology, pro-life. So this was something that was written on their website, at least as of 2023.
Mm-hmm.
The Charlotte Lozier Institute, one of the nation's largest and best-funded anti-abortion groups, explicitly recommends that treatment for emergency abortions be done by labor induction or C-section, which they call medically standard. It is absolutely not standard.
No.
The group claims a C-section is a more appropriate method of separation.
Oh my God.
Because it shows greater respect for the human dignity of the fetus, even if she is too young or sick to survive. Unsurprisingly, dignity for women isn't mentioned.
Right.
And before we discuss that real quick, I just wanted to say this comes from page 40, and the previous quote that I read is from page 41. So they're both like from the same section of the book, but just in case anyone wanted to like actually go in and read more about this.
You know, like obviously this is horrifying and upsetting for reasons that we've already covered, but something that's really interesting to me about the way that they frame this is they refer to the fetus as she.
Yeah, I was thinking the exact same thing.
Do you want to talk about that?
Well, I would assume it's to make them seem as if they are a feminist pro-woman group.
Yeah, I think it's to put like this veneer of feminism over it. Like, we support all women, including the unborn ones.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I think we kind of touched on this already in the last point that, like, so this anti-abortion group is making the statement that C-sections are medical standard, which, again, just goes against the idea generally that, and I'm not a surgeon, I am a pharmacist, so surgeons, please come and tell me.
Our vast surgeon audience.
Yes.
Our many hundreds of surgeon listeners.
Yes. Please correct me for this if I am wrong, but I would generally say that as medical technology advances, we are looking for ways to become less invasive with our surgeries.
Well, every time you talk to somebody who's like, oh, I'm getting a hip replacement or I'm getting a knee replacement, and here's how they're doing it now. They just make one small incision over here and they don't have to, break this bone or...
Yeah.
Like that's always the exciting thing that they talk about.
Yeah.
So I'm pretty sure that definitely means that I'm kidding. That's anecdotal evidence, but no, that's my impression as well.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And so the other kind of somewhat sinister thing about this is the idea that, like, this organization, the Charlotte Lozier Institute, is a research and education group.
Yeah, that it ain't.
Yeah, they are funding their own studies and coming up with their own quote-unquote medical standards that go against what the majority of medical consensus is.
Yeah, it's a common tactic. Like astroturfing is when they fake a grassroots movement in favor of something, but it's actually funded by like a special interest lobby, or like false flag, are like attacks that are made to look like an unreasonable opposition, like this kind of, oh, we're a neutral research and research and education organization.
Yeah,
we don't really have an agenda. That's a lie.
Yeah.
Or these crisis pregnancy centers.
Yeah.
We're here to help you figure out what to do now that you're pregnant, and we're neutral and we're care providers, but in fact actually,
and birth control is bad and you should...
Right. Yeah.
I think the other striking use of language in this quote is the part where they talk about a more appropriate method of separation. Specifically, the line was, the group claims a C-section is a more appropriate method of separation. So already they're using the phrase a more appropriate method of separation in place of abortion, because obviously an anti-abortion group doesn't want to say that the group claims a C-section is a more appropriate method of abortion. They're using the word separation as if we are, again, this belief that the fetus is a person and therefore we are going to separate the mom and the fetus.
There's something of like a no true Scotsman thing going on here, where it's like abortion is the thing that we don't like. And
Yes.
So if we're like acknowledging a medical carve out where it's necessary, then it must not be abortion.
Exactly.
It must be something else.
Exactly. And that the book goes into that point a lot more.
Yeah.
And I think as we get into some of these other points, we'll see why this idea that I grew up with, that if an abortion is really needed, medically needed, a conservative would support it, is if taken from the aggregate of the conservative opinion, is not actually true.
Right. And something about Jewish law is that Jewish law says that if the pregnant person's life depends on an abortion, then the abortion must be performed. And so, like, I feel like that's a really interesting detail with all of the religious freedom justifications for these arguments, and a lot of credence is given to conventional Christian beliefs about abortions. And
well, we are a Christian nation after all.
Shut up. Yeah, keep going. Sorry. I don't know why I'm apologizing for talking on our podcast that I'm supposed to talk on.
No. Yeah, no. I mean, I think that's actually a really interesting point. And as I've gotten to know you more and know and become more familiar with Judaism and Jewish culture, I'm learning a lot of interesting things that...
Jewish culture is apologizing for talking on my podcast that I'm supposed to be talking on.
Oh, yeah. Is that a Jewish thing to do?
What?
Is that a Jewish thing to do?
Over apologizing? I think so, yeah. Also stomach pain.
Yeah.
Feeling a draft.
Yeah.
Anyway.
Okay, so the next point, so this came from a Journal of the American Medical Association Internal Medicine report in 2024, and this is where things do get a little bit more graphic. So if you've been fine up to this point, just again, reminder that there is the content warning that we spoke of in the beginning. This report was titled Rape-Related Pregnancy in the 14 States with Total Abortion Bans.
Mm-hmm.
So this report from JAMA was conducted from July of 2022 to January of 2024.
Mm-hmm.
There were an estimated 519,000 completed vaginal rapes in the 14 states with abortion bans, resulting in 64,000 pregnancies.
Boy, oh boy.
And that just blew my mind.
And that's what we can verify. I mean, when you read about the stockpiles of unprocessed rape kits and the amount of rapes that are never reported.
Yeah. I think that actually is estimating. I don't think that's all verified reports.
Mm-hmm.
I think that is an estimation.
Oh, word. Okay. Never mind.
Yeah. But regardless, 519,000 over the span of a year and a half. 519,000 cases of rape. And it's not like this was just a number that they're just kind of guessing here. I mean, they're basing this off of the best data that they have.
And if you think about it for a second, it makes a great deal of sense that rape would be as or more likely to result in pregnancy than consensual sex, because in consensual sex, you have a say in condom use.
Yeah.
Right. In rape, not so much. That's kind of the whole point.
Yeah.
And also because rape is so traumatic, and because people who have experienced rape are not necessarily so likely to recognize it for what it is right away,
Mm-hmm.
you might not seek out your plan B.
Yeah.
Yeah. Or if you live in a place, with a lot of abortion restrictions, you might not be able to get your plan B.
Yeah. So again, 519,000. Just that number alone,
Mm-hmm.
as an estimation of the number of people, and this is just in 14 states. This isn't in all of the United States, and this is over a period of a year and a half.
Mm-hmm.
And it's July of 2022 was picked. That was when the Dobbs decision came out and Roe v. Wade was appealed or repealed through January of 2024. So we're talking the first year and a half of a post-Roe America.
And I'm sorry to be upsetting, but when you think about this on a human level, when you think about a traumatic violation like rape that takes away your sense of control over your own body, and then being forced to experience pregnancy, which is, I have to imagine that in that situation, it's another profound and traumatic violation. Your body is changing so quickly and in many really unpleasant and painful ways.
Yeah.
Nausea, rashes, the amount of medical interventions for just everyday discomforts that are intensified by pregnancy are less available to you. And then the prospect of having to go through giving birth, that's so scary.
Yeah.
It's so upsetting to think about.
And
never mind to live through.
I think this might be a little misogynist, and you can
smack you on the hand.
Yes, for it. And it's not even really a joke, but a common refrain that guys will say in the company of one another when talking about women's health is, boy, am I glad I'm not a woman.
Really?
Oh, yeah. Because of just the number of more medical issues that a woman would typically go through than a man.
Oh, man. See, this is how I can tell I'm cis, because I'm well, the alternative is having just a penis dangling around. How undignified. What if someone kicks you? I don't know. Seems really unappealing.
Yeah. Yeah, getting kicked.
Is that misinterest?
Is
of me?
No, I don't know. So that wasn't the only number. Again, I just wanted to pause on the 519,000 rapes. And regardless, this is just surprising to me, not in just a post-Roe versus pre-Roe America, or post-Roe America versus Roe America, I guess, but just in the number of like contextualizing the number of rapes that happen in 14 states over a 1.5 year period, I would not have thought it was anywhere near that number.
Oh, see, that would be surprising to you?
That would be very surprising to me. And that was something that was surprising to me reading the book now.
That would not be surprising to me.
Yeah. So 519,000, and it resulted in 64,000 pregnancies. 64,000 people got pregnant from these rapes.
Mm-hmm.
And again, just a whole, like, over the course of a 1.5 years, like, these are numbers of people, like, I would have said maybe it was in the single-digit thousands. Mm-hmm. We're talking 60 times more than that. So as kind of the conservative stand-in in our discussion, again, I hope the listeners know that I'm not a conservative, but as someone from a conservative background,
they would have figured that out by now.
I feel like that would be us just as much of a shock for a conservative, because there's this idea that this is also the idea that I grew up with, was that, okay, yes, like maybe we do say there's an exception for abortion in the case of rape, but that's so rare that like we don't need to frame our discussion around that.
Why do you think? I have a few ideas in my head, but I'm more interested, at least at first, to hear why you think conservatives think that would be so rare. Because I'm wondering if part of it is that, like, conservatives think that rape is a lot rarer than it actually is.
Oh, yeah, for sure.
Why? Why do you think?
Well, and I my best guess is that there's this idea that, oh, boys will be boys. Mm-hmm. Therefore, like, I imagine that if confronted with these numbers, and actually this actually did happen with this study where this report from JAMA, a fairly well recognized, internationally recognized, like, medical journal, mm-hmm. comes out with these numbers that are, again, estimations, but like they're not just pulling numbers that, they are basing it on the best data available.
Mm-hmm.
And then in response to this, I think it might have been Turning Point.
Mm-hmm. Oh my gosh.
Or Turning Point, or another one of the conservative groups, this study comes out and then they're like, oh, come on, you're like over exaggerating this. Like, that's not really the case.
I wonder, this is like something that I don't know if on a different day this would occur to me, but I'm thinking this after the conversation that we had at that table over there about an hour ago. And bear with me because I'm articulating something that I have never thought of yet. Someone like you, even when you voted for Trump, when you would have identified as conservative,
mm-hmm.
you would never dream of harming somebody in that way.
No.
And I think most people would never dream of harming somebody in that.
Yeah.
We know that most rapists rape many times. And so this boys will be boys veneer that I understand as rape culture.
Yeah.
Maybe to the conservative mind, it seems silly and disconnected from reality. Because if you have a conservative mindset and also you would never dream of harming someone in that way, they must just be outrageous jokes.
Yeah.
Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
And also, like, outrageous jokes that are only made in certain settings among adolescents who kind of grow out of it.
Yeah.
It's not really something that we do in our family. Whereas, like, from my mindset, understanding all these things as rape culture,
yeah,
as like the types of social norms that give cover to rapists,
yeah,
it comes across as a lot more sinister when I hear frat boys chanting "no" means yes and yes means harder or whatever.
Yeah,
and like I think it dovetails with what we were talking about in terms of like how actually a lot of crudeness and irreverence and profanity is almost more left-coded than right-coded, because that boys will be boys conservative attitude is like, yeah, boys will be boys, that's locker room talk, like that's marginal, that's not mainstream.
Yeah,
that's not what we believe in our community, and we don't behave that way. That's like weird edge cases of boys blowing off steam.
Yeah.
And I would never do that to a woman. Nobody I know would do that to a woman. It would be cruel and violent and bad to do that to a woman. So obviously they're just weird jokes.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
And I think it also gets into a discussion of, well, rape can't happen if two people are married, Or
yeah. So that,
like,
that gets into a whole different thing.
well, so that's where they start questioning these things. Or like, oh, well, what was the woman doing like at the time? Or what was she wearing? It gets into the victim blaming. And so it's trying to cast doubt on what a rape actually is when it's simply an unwanted
Right. And I think what you're
sexual act.
describing is just like straight up misogyny. It's funny. I almost feel like I'm being more forgiving of the conservative mindset than you are, because I'm like getting really curious about it and you're like over it. You know what I mean? But yeah, I think that's totally true. And I think that speaks to like a core moral value on the left, or a core moral feminist value, is consent and bodily autonomy.
Yeah.
And right-wing morality doesn't seem to flow from that, from avoiding causing harm to other people, avoiding violating other people's consent and autonomy, but instead flows from like hierarchies and systems of authority and compliance with what is natural and what is good. And those are like really two different worldviews. Yeah. And that is like complicated to hold in tension with the reality that like also, I think for a lot of human nature is to not want to harm or hurt other people. And so you can have this idea that marriage is a natural God-ordained institution that means that you have unfettered access to your wife's body, and you love your wife and you wouldn't want to hurt her or make her uncomfortable.
Yeah.
Which is hard to like, because I'm so viscerally opposed to the first premise.
Yeah.
I have trouble holding in my head that the second relationship reality is true.
Right. Yeah. If you really believe in patriarchy, how could you
also defer to your wife's comfort and safety? Those are two things that are hard to hold in your head at the same time.
Yeah.
But we must, because they're
key to understanding
how people who have compassion and empathy and good intentions and genuine love for women can perpetuate worldviews that harm women en masse.
Yeah. And I think it's important that we pause on these things and talk about it and talk about these differences.
I do feel like that is what makes us interesting.
Oh, yeah, for sure. I mean, well, I guess that's really up to our listeners. But so the second point that this study found was that 90% of those pregnancies, again, so we're talking about 64,000 pregnancies over a year and a half, 90% of them, which is 58,000 pregnancies, occurred in the 9 states with no exceptions for rape.
Yeah.
So, again, this study was looking at the 14 states with some sort of abortion ban. And not necessarily a total abortion ban, but some sort of ban on or limitation on abortion. In the 9 of those 14 states that had no exceptions for rape, that resulted in 58,000 or 90% of those pregnancies that occurred from rape. So this conservative talking point that like if rape is really, or if an abortion is really needed, or if there's a rape, then the woman will be able to get care. You have 9 states here where that's not possible. A woman who gets pregnant will have to carry that pregnancy through, even if they are raped. And then beyond that, which we'll go into in some of our other points, like if the women tried to leave the state to get an abortion, especially if they're a minor who like has very little access to resources, may not be able to rely on their parents for this. These states are going after groups and individuals who are trying to help out these girls by getting them abortion care outside of the state and calling it human trafficking.
Oh my God.
And
God, there's so much to unpack there, but we don't have time.
Yeah. I mean,
where do you think that conservative idea stems from, that if you really needed an abortion, you would be able to get it? It seems silly to me.
Yeah, and the book talks a little bit about conservative women and their support for anti-abortion measures, how there is seemingly this kind of underlying belief that, well, if I really need an abortion or if my daughter really needed an abortion, we would get them one. But the book maybe explains this better. My idea is that people are responding to a political measure, the right to access to abortion, and saying that that is generally bad and I don't want that to be widespread. But if someone really needs it, like, and when they say someone, I think what they're really saying is if I or someone I loved really needed it, it would be okay.
It reminds me of, like, there's this liberal joke about when I voted for the leopards eating people's face party, I never thought that the leopards would eat my face.
Yeah.
And that's bringing it to mind. But I'm wondering if, like, some of this, well, if somebody was raped, if somebody was sick, if somebody had a non-viable pregnancy, then of course they would be able to get an abortion. I'm wondering if that's coming from, like, a just world fallacy that is, like, more part of, like, the conservative mindset.
And the problem is that it comes up against this ideology that a fetus is a life. And if a fetus is a life, then any abortion is murder. Or not a fetus is a life. A fetus is a person.
Yeah. It's breathlessly, shockingly cruel, wrapped up in a veneer of caring for the most vulnerable.
Yeah, for sure.
Okay, keep going.
Okay, so the next point, and a lot of these points have to do, again, these are points that I found the most, I guess, shocking. Obviously, we know that conservatives generally don't support abortion, but I think what these points get at is the idea that conservatives will, especially on a political standpoint, say, we support, like, common sense access to abortions or something like that. You know, you might even hear that from, like, a more liberal politician. This idea that we need to restrict abortions, but if someone really needs it, then they should be able to get it. And this is, all these points really go to show that
that's not how it's playing reality. It's kind of like how most gun owners and gun users support common sense gun control, but the NRA is such a powerful lobby that the laws don't reflect that.
Yeah. So this was a quote from Kristen Hawkins, who is the president of the anti-abortion group Students for Life. I think it was, well, this was in 2023. This article was written by Jessica Valenti in 2023 about this comment that Kristen Hawkins made in a podcast, I'm assuming, which was not too much before that. So here's the quote. Surprisingly, people tend to think that every woman who is a survivor of sexual assault gets pregnant, which is not true. About 5% of women who survive sexual assault get pregnant, and actually the horror of the sexual assault actually helps prevent a lot of pregnancies itself because your body's natural response to this atrocity, that's happened.
Yeah, it's kind of like the Todd Aiken quote, like, the female body, if it's a legitimate rape, the female body has ways of shutting that whole thing down.
Yeah, and it's funny because you mentioned that Todd Aiken quote, and the article that Jessica Valenti writes, in the paragraph immediately above this, she says, yeah, that's right. Over a decade after former Missouri Representative Todd Aiken said, if it's a legitimate rape, the female body has ways to try to shut that whole thing down.
I almost said it verbatim.
Yeah. So that's just plain misinformation. That is not medical fact. That's being spread. And to what end? Again, it's trying to dismiss this idea that rape is that serious of a thing because it spreads this
rape must not happen all that often, and when it does, it won't have these long-term consequences because, like, did you know that if you are having a bad time, that the sperm can't reach I'm sorry to laugh. It's just so outrageous.
Yeah. And so my response to this would be, okay, so if a woman who was raped does get pregnant, then what are you proposing? That because it's so rare that she doesn't deserve? I mean, it's even if we assume that what you're saying is right, which it's factually not, that women's bodies reject pregnancies due to rape, what does that mean in the world where, 5% of women who get raped get pregnant? Are you saying that those 5% of women don't need to be considered when we're considering access to abortion?
Right. And then, like, but I just feel like this myth that the horror of rape prevents pregnancy, it dovetails with this idea that what is natural is good, that it is designed to be morally good. And so because rape is morally bad, it then wouldn't result in pregnancy because natural processes reflect fundamental morality in nature.
Yes.
Which is
As coded by
unfortunately
God.
not true. It would be real convenient, but it's not true.
Yeah. And that underlies so many conservative viewpoints.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, you could apply that same thinking to their position on trans healthcare, on
gay marriage.
Yeah. Like just
even racial hierarchies.
Yeah. Where we have tried to create data to show that there is this racial hierarchy. We've gone out of our way to try and
codify
eugenics.
Yeah.
And then the most infuriating thing about it all is that it's then umbrellaed under, well, facts don't care about your feelings.
Right.
And it's like, you're not saying facts. You are saying things that you feel are right. If anything, that is the quote that the left should be saying to the right.
It is
in so many cases.
I love to hear you get worked up about this shit because I feel like for so long I was getting all worked up about it and you were going, yeah.
Okay, so there's one more example that I wanted to go over before we kind of start to wrap things up.
Yeah.
So we're continuing the discussion of, like, it would be common sense that women would have access to abortions if there was a medical exception or if there was in the exception of rape. And so we've talked about rape. Now here's a case of medical exception.
Mm-hmm.
So this is the story of Kate Cox, who in 2023, she was unable to get an abortion in her home state, even though she was diagnosed with a dangerous and non-viable pregnancy. With the help of the Center for Reproductive Rights, which is
We love the Center for Reproductive Rights. I've applied for 2 jobs there. They did not interview me. That's okay.
That's okay, though. Yeah. So with the help of the Center for Reproductive Rights, Cox filed for an emergency order asking for an abortion, a plea to prevent her baby's suffering and to end her own. In a just world, it would be unthinkable for a woman to have to beg the courts for such a thing.
Yeah.
But Cox doesn't live in a just world. She lives in Texas. And so she and her lawyers hoped that her obviously dire circumstances would clear the way for her to get care. Instead, the state fought Cox's request. And by the way, Texas is one of the states with no exceptions for rape.
Yes.
Now, this wasn't rape, but
breathtaking cruelty.
Instead, the state fought Cox's request. Lawyers for Texas claimed her life wasn't sufficiently at risk, arguing that countless women give birth every day with similar medical histories, as if this nightmare pregnancy was just business per usual. The state didn't even bother to address the fact that the pregnancy was non-viable because Texas doesn't have an exception for fatal fetal conditions. Still, a sympathetic judge who got emotional during her ruling granted Cox's request. She called what the law was doing to Cox a genuine miscarriage of justice.
Yes.
That ruling didn't stand for long, though. Texas Attorney General Ken Paxton soon sprang into action, asking the state Supreme Court to reverse the judge's decision, all to prevent one single woman from getting care. Paxton, the Texas State Attorney General, was so intent on forcing Cox to carry this pregnancy, in fact, that he sent letters to 3 hospitals in Houston threatening them with criminal charges if they provided or assisted in giving her an abortion.
And you hear about this shit, and you hear about women being thrown in jail for having a miscarriage, and it all adds up to, obviously, the anti-choice crowd simply hates women and wants them to suffer and die. And that's like, that is the attitude that I had approaching our earliest conversations about reproductive rights.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I hate to say, well, you can fire back at me for this. I think it's a little, not more nuanced than that. I would say it's different than that. They're obviously not going to say they hate women. And
no,
they are so caught up in patriarchal norms and what is natural and just and the natural duties of motherhood that they can't see that what they're doing or choose not to, or in the worst cases, as you said, are actually supportive of things that harm women.
Yeah, there's like a whole set of mythology is constructed in order to justify this torture and cruelty.
Yeah.
Which I think is, I hope, what we have been unpacking for the past hour and a half or so.
Yeah.
And the point is that, like, this bird's eye view that you and I have right now of, you know, this attorney general going out of his way to force this woman to go through this horrible medical ordeal, and the women who are prosecuted and jailed for having miscarriages, which we haven't even touched upon today.
Yeah.
And the women who are forced to undergo pregnancy after they've been raped. Like, you simply do not have this bird's eye view if you grow up with this set of conservative premises.
If you grew up like I did.
Yeah. But the thing is, and where my ignorance starts, is I assume that everybody is seeing the same reality that I'm seeing.
Mm-hmm.
And so if you are against abortion access and reproductive health care access more generally, if you're in favor of restricting these things, then it must be driven by a hatred of women. Mm-hmm. And I hope that what we've talked about today has elucidated that it's more complicated than that. And which is not to say that we should forgive or justify or defend any of these policies.
No.
But that maybe the thing that we've learned today that can help us to act in a more loving way in society is to get curious about how our anti-choice or like self-described pro-life loved ones understand these things, to ask more questions and spend less time lecturing, because that is what deep organizing looks like, right? Like
deep organizing?
Yeah, like deep canvassing.
I get the gist of what you're saying, but maybe expound.
Sure. Deep, like if you just were talking about political canvassing, you'd usually be talking about like talking to someone who's more neutral or even like already agrees with you but isn't active yet. But deep canvassing is when you have, you know, multiple longer, deeper conversations.
Yeah.
And like try to bring them over to your side. But like, honestly, the real goal is human connection and mutual understanding, right?
Yeah.
And as far as canvassing and organizing goes, I would say it's not a good use of our time or resources because you're not going to convince people over, you know, a conversation at their doorstep or even a conversation over a cup of coffee. But if these are your loved ones,
yeah,
you might be able to win them over a period of months or years. Or like perhaps another important goal is simply to be understood and to understand them. I also think that a way that it is really necessary to act loving in society, to practice love in society, is to vigorously lobby for abortion rights and reproductive rights in general, and to use our time and resources and money to improve reproductive health care access.
Yeah.
And what are some organizations that we can support with our time and with our money that are furthering that goal? There's the Abortion Access Fund. There are different abortion access funds. If you Google Abortion Access Fund and then the name of your state, one will pop up.
Yeah. I mean, and
Planned Parenthood, Center for Reproductive Rights.
Yeah, Center for Reproductive Rights. So maybe what I'll do is in the show notes for this, I'll link a group or two that if you feel compelled, you can help support. Before we close out, I do want to give my point of view coming out of this.
Mm-hmm.
So, you know, we talked in the beginning how a lot of these things just weren't really issues that I heard discussed to the extent that it was in this book, to the extent that we discussed it today, to the
extent that I was having those kinds of conversations all the time from when I was like 15.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I think that is a problem. So there's this idea, and maybe, I don't know if it's more so a conservative thing, but it's certainly a quote unquote, I would call it maybe an American thing that, you know, you don't talk about money,
religion, or politics. Mm-hmm.
And
you can avoid ad hominem. You can avoid name calling. You can avoid accusations. And you can still show the pain and concern and passion.
Yeah.
You know, this is really important to me. I feel really sad that this happens to so many people, that these are the medical realities. These are the traumas that so many people go through when they can't access abortion care. That's not ad hominem.
Yeah.
That's just saying how you feel and sharing the reality that you know to be true.
Right. And I think that is something that I have learned oh so well from you.
Oh, wow, really? Because I feel like I get so hot-headed and I alienate people so badly. Or I just avoid it entirely. I'm like working to... That was my Tashlik casting off of my sin, was to be more patient and also more open.
Yeah. And it's a process. None of us are perfect. We're all flawed. These are all things that we don't need to say, but that we say every time.
Yeah.
But, you know, for me, I think the thing that I really took away from all this was like, this was information that I just didn't know or in some sense have access to. I mean, sure, I could have like found this information, but because I grew up in such an insulated culture and community, I just took for granted the viewpoint that, oh, everyone kind of must share, that maybe our debate is, should governments step in and like intervene on abortion? Like maybe that was a debate to have, but never really interacting with the like reality of what people go through in trying to get abortions and in trying to get medical care.
Because why would you talk about medical realities? That's impolite. Some people are squeamish.
Yeah.
It's also a little bit, I'm not saying the things that I actually believe, right? I'm saying. Also, you know, talk of people's sexual functioning and sexual health is not polite.
Yeah.
But it's like, well, if you're gonna advocate for laws that limit people's reproductive health, you do need to be able to talk about reproductive health.
Yeah.
In detailed ways.
Yeah. And I think to piggyback off that, and also to refer back to the quote I made earlier about like it's not polite to talk about money, religion, or politics, that's actually something that I've always kind of felt an impulse against, because who does it help that we don't talk about money, religion, and politics?
Mm-hmm.
And I think based on our discussion here today, it doesn't help the people who are really affected by it.
No, it helps the existing
status quo
and balance of power.
Whew. That was kind of a heated one.
Yeah, it
Not
was.
at each other, but like, yeah.
No, I don't know if we're going to have time to record the other one today.
Yeah.
But I think that'll be a really good one.
Yes, for sure. I'm looking forward to hearing what people have to say about it.
Yes. Shout out to Morgan and Salam.
Yes, our number one fans.
Our number one and I think only so far fans.
All right. Talk to you soon, Hannah.
I love you, Samway.
Love you.
Yours is great.
I'm going to cut that out. I don't know that was kid friendly.
Is this supposed to be kid friendly, this episode?